Hey, I'm Susan Palmer of Lead Cat Press. This is my studio update. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, you can head to the description box below and find the chapter for the topic that you're most interested in. But here's what we're covering today. For the technique study, I'm going over some triad inversions in a major scale. So I'm changing the order of the notes in a little scale study there. For the reading, I've dropped a flashback from 2007 where I talk about reading syncopated rhythms. So I thought it was good content, and you'll get to see me a lot younger, which is just kind of fun, I think. For the chords, I threw in some open triads, and these are great voicings to use if you're new to effects pedals, especially like reverb pedals, and that happened with one of my students this week, so I thought that'd be kind of fun. For the scales and soloing, I offer some tips on how to break out of a rut if your solos all kind of sound the same. For the theory, I go over a dominant diminished scale. For the tunes, I dropped one that I recorded a while ago it's a John Scofield tune called Wabash III. And the pro tip has to do with maintaining our commitment to practice. So heavy stuff there. But anyways, thanks so much for tuning in and subscribing. And as always, I teach online private lessons, online group classes. I have a method book series, and all of that's at leadcatpress.com. This week I have another challenging technique study for you. And this time I'm only going to play it in one position. I'm going to use a 6-string root C major scale. And this exercise uses triads, but I'm going to mix up the order of those notes. So I'm going to start with the 3rd, then play the root, and then the 5th for each scale degree in that pattern all the way up and all the way back down. So it sounds like this. So if you can count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, you can play almost any rhythm that's out there. And I'm going to show you how. Now first, I just put these dots under the different syllables here. And all I'm going to do is when I say the note 1, I'm actually going to hit a note on my guitar. When I say and, I'm going to hit a note on my guitar. When I say 2, I'm not going to hit anything because there's no dot there. And so on. So this rhythm that I've written out in a very simplified form is going to look and sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Simple, right? Let's try it together one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now here I wrote out the same rhythm, but I've got the picking strokes in here. Now part of this system of learning how to read music and rhythms involves keeping your pick consistent with the upbeats and downbeats in music. If you're tapping your foot to music, that's even better because whenever your foot goes down, that's going to be on the downbeat. Your pick should also go down. When your foot is up, then use an upstroke with your pick. That's going to be the upbeat. So as you can see here, all of the numbers are on downbeats. They're all using a down pick. All of the ands, the halfway point in between those beats, use an up pick. So hopefully that will help you. Now let's try this again, and I'm going to be real consistent with my picking. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to hold up my guitar and do the same thing so you can see what I'm doing with my picking. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now I want you to notice something that I'm doing. It's called ghost picking. I keep my hand moving, my picking hand moving, even if I'm not playing a note. I'm actually ghosting those notes. That's going to help me stay consistent with my counting. That's something that you might want to do at this early stage of counting and playing these rhythms. When you get a little further along, you might not have to do that. But you know what? Even when I'm encountering a real tricky rhythm, I'll go ahead and ghost pick those notes just so that I know where I'm at in the measure. Now this is what that same rhythm looks like when I put the actual note type with them. This is a single eighth note. A single eighth note looks a lot like a quarter note, except that it has a flag on the end of it. And a single eighth note is worth half of a beat, so it just gets the first half of beat 1. And a quarter note is worth a full beat, so that's going to get the end of 1 and the next beat 2. Then I have a single eighth note that's worth half of a beat, and then I have the conclusion of the measure, the second half of the measure is just a half note, and that's good for 2 full beats. So 3 and is 1 beat, and then 4 and is the next beat. So I'm going to play this rhythm one more time with those actual notes there. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One more time. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this is a slightly different rhythm. I'm going to go ahead and play this one for you. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And let me give you some more examples here. Now I'm starting with the half note, and then I've got the single eighth note tricky rhythm here in the second half of the measure. That's going to look and sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here's another example. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And I have one more example here. These are all in the book. You'll find them on page 29, starting about halfway down the page. Here's the final example. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And I really want you to watch that picking. So that you have all those rhythm exercises. Those are going to help you really absorb these concepts. So work really, really hard on those. And, you know, it does take a lot of work. So have fun, work hard. Thanks.
I want to show you some cool chords. These are open triads. I just played a G triad in 3 different places there, the different inversions. And I'm going to descend here with a C open triad. And a triad, as you know, is a 3-note chord. It's made up of the root, the third, and the fifth from the major scale. And you can order those notes in different ways to determine the inversion. So if you start with the root note being the lowest note, that's called root position. If you start it with the third note being the lowest note, that's first inversion. And if the fifth is the lowest note, that is second inversion. And most of the triads that I start with when I'm teaching my students are closed triads. That means those notes are right next to each other. So this would be a G triad in root position. So I have G, B, D, and then this is first inversion. So I have B, D, G, and then up here is second inversion, D, G, B. You can see that I had my root. The note G is my lowest note here in root position. The third is the lowest note for first inversion, and D, the fifth, is the lowest note for second inversion. With open triads, we're going to spread out those voices a little bit, take advantage of all of the strings that we have on the guitar. So my root position G major triad open is going to sound like this. So I'm playing G with my first finger on the low E string, D I'm playing with my third finger on the A string, and then my second finger is reaching up for that third, which is the note B on the G string. It's a very rich sounding chord there. I really like it. The next one would be first inversion. So now I'm going to play B with my third finger on the low E string. My first finger is playing the note G on the D string, and my pinky is playing the note D on the G string. That's our first inversion because the third of that chord, B, is our lowest note. The next one is second inversion, and that one starts with the note D, which is the fifth. It starts with that. I'm playing that with my second finger on the low E string. I have B under my first finger on the D string, and then my pinky is grabbing that G on the G string. So I've got these 3 voicings here that I'm playing for G. If I wanted to transpose these to the key of C, I would have my second inversion down here, then my root position up here, and then my first inversion up here. And I find it's really helpful both as a student of these voicings and as just as a musician to try playing these in different ways. So like what I did there, I like playing, or I think I did this at the beginning, I like playing my G's all the way up, and then I'll play my C's going back down. I just like how that sounds. It sounds like I'm playing a lot more chords than I actually am. Played a lot of different voicings of those chords, but it's still just a G chord. This is still G chord, and now it's a C chord. But it sounds like I'm doing a lot more, which I think is really cool. Now, the next thing I like to do is just try to find the closest proximity to arrange these chords. So maybe I'm playing G down here, so my closest C will be right there. And that sounds really cool. I like because you're keeping that note G in the bass, you know, that just sounds really neat. The next one I could do would be play a G in first inversion here, and then follow that with C in root position. And that gives us that cool bass line from B to C. Then I could play a G second inversion up here, and my closest C chord would be right here. So we have that D going to E in the bass, which I think is really cool. I'm just kind of hung up on the bass notes there. I like these chords because they're real growly and they just have a neat sound. They work really great if you're playing with a lot of reverb, or different effects can really go well with these chords. So I encourage you to first just experiment with them. Like, even if you're not sure of the inversion or the name of the chord or anything, just, kind of play around with these and you'll get some really cool sound. It's like, being a beginner on guitar all over again when you got your first chord book. And, you just play through these sounds and, enjoy them. Maybe you'll do some writing that's inspired by these. Maybe they won't turn out to be these specific inversions or these chords that I just taught you, but it's just kind of open your mind and get your ears going a little bit more. I know a lot of students get real hung up on where's the root, where's the fifth, where's the third. And that's great. I do want you to incorporate that into your practice. But I also think just getting used to the sounds of these and experimenting and, being a kid again, playing guitar, I think that's a great way to go. This is going to sound like an infomercial, but I can't help myself. Are you tired of all your guitar solos sounding the same? If so, you might want to try starting on some different notes. So what I mean is, and this is for my students who are studying chord tones, is a lot of times we fall into a habit of starting on the root note or starting on the third, or, we have our favorite places on the neck and we might not even be really aware. We're like, oh, I'm playing a chord tone over that, so it's all good. And it is good, but eventually you'll get tired of playing the same chord tones over the same chords every single time you run across that chord. So this exercise is just going to cause you to break out of that a little bit. And the idea is that, maybe you go through like a 12-bar blues in the key of A, and you start each phrase, you make a very conscious effort to start each phrase on the root note. And then maybe the next time through, you make a conscious choice to start each phrase on the third of each chord. So over the A7, that would be C sharp. Over the D7, that would be F sharp. Over the E7, that would be G sharp. And what's happening when you do that is you're going to play different things that you don't normally play. It might actually cause you to really think about what you're playing and notice, like, wow, this is kind of a blurry area of the neck for me, or, at least finding that chord tone in this area is a little tricky to do. So I'm going to just show you the kind of final version of this. I'm going to attempt that anyways. And I'm going to kind of mix and match the notes that I'm playing on, but I'm going to let you know how thoughtful I am by telling you the note that I'm going to play over the chord right before I play it. I'm going to start with the fifth, the fifth, third, the third, the third, the seventh, the seventh. I had a student reach out this weekend who wanted to be reminded of what the D dominant diminished scale is. So I thought I'd use this opportunity to create a little video for that student and anyone else who's interested. So here is a D7 chord, and a D7 chord is composed of these notes: D, F sharp, A, and C. Now to turn this into a D7 flat 9 chord, I need to let go of that D right here and instead play an E flat. And when I do that, I change my fingers a little bit just to accommodate that one note change, but I eliminate the bar. So you don't have to, but I like to do that because, I don't know, just feels economical to me that way. So the chord tones for a D7 flat 9 chord, we have D sharp, F sharp, A, and C. So all the other notes stay the same. So the only difference between a D7 chord, D, F sharp, A, and C, and a D7 flat 9 chord is just that flat 9, that E flat there that's added. When you're soloing and you're soloing over a D7 flat 9, it sounds okay to play the note D and the note E flat. And that brings us to how we're going to construct the rest of that D7 dominant diminished scale. We're going to half step into each chord tone in a D7 flat 9 chord. So I'm going to play D, E flat, then I'm going to play F, F sharp, A flat, A, B, C. And now I have a D7, or just a D dominant diminished scale. This week's pro tip has to do with practice, and specifically, what about those days when you don't practice? So we often make goals for ourselves, like practicing 10 minutes a day, and you get to the end of a really long day, it's almost bedtime, and you think, man, I'm really tired, I'm going to pick this up tomorrow. And then the next day rolls around, and you think, man, this is a really busy week, I'm going to do this on the weekend, or I'm just going to start fresh next week. That sounds like a great idea. And what happens when you do that is you're breaking a commitment that you made with yourself, which is not a good habit to have. And the other thing is you're not going to make the kind of progress that you want to make on guitar. And so what I want you to think about on those days where it's late and you feel like you can't practice is pick your guitar up, just noodle around for a couple of minutes or practice for 5 minutes, something, because that is going to help you maintain that positive relationship between you and your commitments. And it's also going to lead to some good practice.